Check 1, check 2. Yes, I'm checking this microphone. 3. This is it. What is it? It. This moment right here, right now. Welcome to the Cannabis Coffee Hour. With your host, me, Rob Cantrell, coming back for episode 221. Let's get it done. This show is for people over 21, cause we're talking about weed, cause we're talking about cannabis. It's all evolving into our culture, into our society, making it legal. It's so interesting to talk about, but at the same time it gets played out. But on this show, I like to keep it fresh, nice and awake. Yeah, it's Def Jam. Tell you who I am. Chuck D. I asked Chuck D to be on this podcast a couple times. He followed me on Twitter. I demolished my Twitter, as you know. I'm not, no judgments if you have Twitter. And I don't want to make this a political podcast, but everybody knows social media is making everybody crazy. So my gig is that I'm only Pinterest. I know I've done that joke on the podcast before, and it's actually working into my act these days. But you can catch me on IG. I have an Instagram that's Rob88Cantrell, and I am the host of this podcast, the Cannabis Coffee Hour. I got amazing cup of coffee here. Another Stumptown subscription. Shout out to my brother-in-law, Kevin. I love you, man. Thank you for hooking this up. Because you can never go wrong with Stumptown. It never bums me out. I guess with this episode, I do want to talk about brands. I actually took notes, and I want to talk about, I've been visiting a couple of the new legal dispensaries in New York and over the weekend. And, this thing is happening really fast, and it's super interesting. But first, we're going to get into the coffee that I'm drinking before we start talking about cannabis. This is Colombian El Jordan direct trade Stumptown. Notes of syrupy cherry, dark chocolate, and baking spice complement one another in this round cup. All right, you got syrupy cherry. Oh man, who doesn't like some cherry sherbet? Some syrup. You got some syrup. We're sipping on some syrup. Stumptown's got some actual syrup in this. No, this is all coffee. This is the notes, the blends. This is all about the blends. Notes and blends. Dark chocolate. I love dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is good for your heart. I want more dark chocolate in my life. I never bum out when it's around. I like it. I slab it with peanut butter all the time. Dark chocolate. You know what I go for? It is the gift is when you see the dark chocolate Kit Kat or the dark chocolate Reese cup. Now they do have those like $3 ones at Trader Joe's, but I still like to do a little candy store, and they got the dark chocolate there. But I bet it's not the best of the best dark chocolate. That's the thing that we're learning is like small businesses do much better or have a much wholesome, more quality control product. But sometimes you just want a Reese cup because of the brand, the lettering, everything. But Stumptown's branding, oh man, if I did a package, I should do a package video for Stumptown. This shit is insane. El Jordan, Stumptown Roastmasters. This group of producers represents our longest standing direct trade relationship in Colombia. Members of the Jordan Group grow and process their coffee on sloping farms high up in the hills of Tulama. Years ago, we set up a supply chain with the ideals of transparency, long-term commitments, price premiums tied to quality. So this is Colombian coffee. This is like some really good El Jordan direct trade whole bean. Grinded it up in the pencil sharpener. Took those beans. Well, it looks like a pencil. I used the grinder that looks like a pencil sharpener. And I grinded them up. And then I run it through the Chemex. I'm strictly Chemex these days. It's got the filter. What I learned was, with this podcast, I'm trying to pass knowledge down. If you're going to drink some coffee, a paper filter will take out the cholesterol. Now, espressos and French press still have like this oil that's kind of cholesterol-y, that's not the best for you as you get older. But if you want to rock some espressos, and some people live to 1,000,000, I do everything sparingly. I think how I got high cholesterol is like during the pandemic, I was eating a lot of pepperoni pizza. Like I was kind of looking down on the cheese slice. Like I was kind of like, yo, I'm not even messing with the cheese slice. I'm only messing with the pepperoni. And that got me stuck because I just think the pepperoni was just too much, and I was just slurping that pepperoni grease, and then it got me high cholesterol. And then the doctor was telling me about my diet, how I needed more vegetables and greenery. And I said, I got you, doc. I'm smoking hella weed. But he said the paper. And then I got hooked up with a Chemex, and I was always like, oh man, this takes too long. But now I love it. It really is. It shows you in life, like sometimes these diversions lead you to a better, I could taste it. I don't know. There's something about the Chemex where it's just like scientifically, architecture, the glass angles, it like gets every bit of the brew down. Like all of it comes down to a certain small head, and it's like running through a river. I've talked about this in past, like growing up, my family being from Virginia, and I would go to this very small town, Pound, Virginia, where my grandmother lived, and there was literally a pipe on the side of the mountain where we would get water from, and she would make iced tea and lemonade, and it was the best in the world. Because it was spring water. It was spring water right from the spout. And this was like the 70s. So before, kind of like, I think the 90s things got toxicity in our city. But what it is like nature cleans the water. By the time it gets to the bottom of the mountain, through all the rocks and all the wood and all the soil, and it still is its same thing. It is just a pure, better. It's like all the good get down to the one point, and then booyakasha. You got some of the fresh water in the world. I really think in the future it's all going to be about quality of water and quality of air, and quality of food, quality of cannabis, and quality of comedy, quality of coffee. Oh man, delish. I do, like, literally I taste syrupy cherry, yes. Dark chocolate, yes. What was the other thing? What was the other note? Bacon spice. Yeah, I guess so. It kind of has like that. It's not bitter. It's kind of like more of like a spice. Ice spice. I haven't heard her rap. I just heard a couple verses. And I know she's up and coming. I have been listening to, I haven't been going that hardcore in the paint. A lot of Grateful Dead on the Sirius XM channel. I really like. Shout out to the Sirius XM Grateful Dead channel, please hook me up with a free yearly subscription for this plug, because it's not a plug. It's me talking from my heart. And that's what I'm going to try to do with the Cannabis Coffee Hour. Try to keep it as real as possible. Well, not keep it real. I mean, what is that? What does that mean? But, if I'm talking about a product, I guess I like it. And I'm learning. I'm always learning. And this weekend, talking about blends, I got to give a shout out to my man, Dan Curry. Dan Curry has been on this podcast. Let me check out what episode that was. I do have it in the ultrasonic data lab that I work with for the podcast, talking to my producers. Oh. That's my song. So I don't know if that picks up. Oh no. Wait a sec. I don't think they can't. I don't think they could stop this podcast because I own the rights to the song. But I do use TuneCore. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if any music labels want to sign me properly. Like, I'm figuring out all the royalties, but there's all these different little things that I'm learning with royalties in business. But I think everybody has to, whether you're doing something creative, like, you really have to know the backstory and how everything works. That's what the writer's strike, the Hollywood writer's strike, shout out to them. Yes, the writers need to get paid. I've been on writing gigs, but I'm in SAG, which is the Actors Guild, and I liked being in it because it guarantees you, X amount of dollars. It's like the boss man can't mess with you with your money. So if you got the gig, you're kind of locked in, and that's just a great way to work. And I feel the same way with the actors, with the Writers Guild, man. You want quality writers, you want cool people going into the profession, you want people to be able to raise families and not write from panic and being scared and desperation. You want the real deal, and I think, I do know, just like these big companies, when there's a lot of money on the table, you just have to watch out for people cutting it off, especially in an industry that's been over 100 years old. So it's like, I don't know, it's complex with business. I don't want to make this a business podcast, but shout out to the writer's strike. I'm down with them, striking it up. Shout out to my man, Dan Curry, who's striking. He is the head writer of the Eric Andre show. And he's also written some movies, and he also was the producer of Bad Trip, the Eric Andre movie, and he always works with Eric over the years, and I knew him both in New York in the early days, and then they went out to California and developed that show. And Dan pulled me into a project, the Craft Punk Political Party, which I pitched him a couple ideas, so I got to write on that a little bit, but I wasn't fully in the union, but I always kick it with Dan whenever I'm in LA. I went to the set and I saw Eric. Congrats on the new season 6 of the Eric Andre's show is coming out. Hopefully I'll try to get Eric on here. I haven't run into him in a couple years, but he's always been cool. But I do know from the Doug Benson podcast he doesn't like to be on camera high. I think he's more of a mushroom guy. He's not like an all day, everyday smoker, or even, I don't know. But he does like weed. Everybody likes weed. It's all about balance with it. I think that's 100% me. I have to say I had a little bit of a leftover edible before this, but nothing crazy. For this episode, I did want to just get into, meeting Dan Curry, in Union Square. That's what I did, on set. I did a bunch of stand-up shows. The Eastville Comedy Club, that's like a comedy club in Brooklyn that that I can walk to and get to. And I did a set there on Friday, but only an 8:00 show. And then I went in and met Dan for a beer after a flight. But Union Square is they have battle rappers and dudes playing chess. They have now they have people selling crystals and weed. Like, weed and mushrooms is open on the street. But that's the thing I wanted to talk about with this episode, with, this bodega weed, or you can't say it's like the underground market versus the legitimate market. And as I've gotten older, the underground market has gotten sketchier, especially during the pandemic, and especially when New York opened up the laws in New York. Every bodega, every smoke shop had like bad weed, or it's from California. There's some that have good. It's just inconsistent. That's what I do like about the going to Housing Works and going to the regulated weed spot. Like, shout out to Jordan Rock, man. I apologize. Everybody that's been listening to this podcast, the audio and video was unacceptable, but I had such a great time with my interview with Jordan Rock that I had to put it up. I mean, my quality control was like, don't put this up. But because the audio is off, I had to use like my iPhone audio, because I used my other camera. I wasn't shooting I didn't have a camera guy. I didn't have a camera sound guy. So I was doing everything myself and in the park. It was just a lot all at once because my equipment was all over town and I had to get it in a week. And I was just like, I want to get another guest. We were moving out of Alte and moving more out into the field. And that's where I want to take this. But I definitely like doing these solo podcasts because I can have quality control of the sound and make sure it sounds good for you guys. Because it bums me out. It is a podcast, so it's all about sound. But yeah, I did pick up those 2 joints for the Jordan Rock episode. Shout out to Jordan. Thank you for doing it. He said he's going to do it again when I can have better sound. So I'll have him down again, and I'll have, I just want to shoot this more out in the field, more like Anthony Bourdain of Coffee and Cannabis. That's kind of where I'm rolling with it. Don't steal my idea. But it's probably, as soon as you say shit, it gets out there. But you know the source. Headspace. That was the joint I was smoking. And let me tell you, this was a legal New York joint, and this was I only took like 3 hits, and it knocked me funky. But it is 24% THC. I had a backwoods, or not, yeah. Is it backwoods? No. Back home. I had Back Home Cannabis, which I love. Shout out to Hudson Valley Back Home Cannabis. I love those pre-rolls, and it's like $35 an eighth, and it's all outdoor grown, and just like it's just really good. But then I picked up some other stuff. So I was wandering around Union Square, and Dan was like, my flight is delayed. I'm not going to be there late. And we were just going to catch up and have a beer. And so I walked by this place, and it's called Dazed Dispensary. Now, this has the New York sticker on it, like Housing Works, like it's official. And I actually have all the New York locations. And the weird thing is that there's no Brooklyn legal spot, like official, like, New York State. There's only there's Housing Works, but now these other ones are popping up, and some have gone down too. I've noticed it hasn't been a lot. Like, yeah, the mayor. I don't want to get political, but he hasn't jumped on this. I mean, it's just hard. It's just big. It's literally like almost bigger than legalizing alcohol, and that must have been a mess when it first went down. And when they made it prohibition, that's moonshine. That's what my Virginia family was drinking, illegal liquor. And that was prevalent down there. There's like these old black and white videos of my dad, and he said there was like a moonshine distillery. There was all kinds of moonshine in Virginia. It was wild. I used to watch this Discovery Channel, and they had moonshiners, but people were moonshining now, like making illegal liquor. And you're like, dude, it's fucking legal. And they're almost like they're making this poison. And I guess how that kind of led me to the legal part of cannabis. In all the places that are, but I went to this place, Dazed, which was awesome, man. It was it was small and it was efficient, and they had pre-rolls. All the people were nice. The branding is cool. It's like pink, but it's from a New Yorker. It's the real deal. The guy is from Harlem, and I got to speak to him. I don't want to blow up his spot too much, but hopefully I'll have him on the Cannabis Coffee Hour. I told him about it, but sometimes I talk to these business guys, and not everybody wants to be on mic or be on camera. I'm so used to dealing with comics where it's comedians and actors where, yeah, it seems like podcasting is kind of the deal right now. Kashawn Warner is a nice dude, man. I told the girl that sold me the pre-roll. So I was waiting on Dan Curry in Union Square on a Friday night after my set. And it was so funny. But I hadn't had any cannabis. I haven't been smoking that hardcore, to tell you the truth. A little bit here and there, a little bit more at night, a little bit more on the edible side at night, but even taking like 4 or 5 days off. I'm just learning how to do that a little bit better. Not to say, when it's time to roll a spliff, it's time to roll a spliff. But I definitely want to reach out to sponsors and get the quality up on this podcast, and not, not what happened to the last episode, or, it's just I've done this before. Like, I've started series. Every time I've filmed something, you got to have, after a while, a budget and money comes together, or you keep it simple like I'm doing. Like, that's kind of been the idea. But now I'm kind of itching to get up and out. But I will again. But, back to the story. So I went to this place. I walked by. It was right next to McDonald's, and it was Dazed Cannabis, and it had the official sticker. They had a menu. Oh man, wait a second. But I had the product up that I had. I picked up a pre-roll, and it was only 15%. It was Headband, Humboldt Headband, from Dazed Cannabis, and it was amazing. It was one of the better spliffs I've had in a while. Now, I say this, and then Dan arrived to Union Square. It was like, yo, I'm hungry. I want to get some food. And the thing is, I bought this spliff, right? And I did it with my debit card. I talked to Keyshawn, and then I went to CVS, and I didn't smoke it. Like, I hadn't smoked in a few days. I went to CVS, and I got a seltzer. I got one of those, it was like it was seltzer lime, not alcohol. Everybody's trying to put seltzer alcohol together. But I did have a beer this night. I haven't been drinking, but I had one Lagunitas. I do like a good IPA now and then. Like, I haven't had a beer, but I had a beer with Dan. I think so. When you haven't seen a friend for a while, sometimes it's necessary. But it did mess me up for a couple days. So I don't know how long I'm going to. If you see me sipping a beer, it's only like once or every 6 months, because I need like a day and a half to sleep after. It just doesn't fuck with my system that well. Cannabis does, and especially the spliff that I had was just so amazing. It was. I'm looking it up right now. But if he goes to Dazed Cannabis, Dazed.fun, which is the Union Square shop, and they have another one. They have another one in Massachusetts, but I didn't. Yeah, Rise Humboldt Headband, and it's an indica. It's a hybrid, but it's an indica hybrid. And I always knew about Headband. Headband I had as, that's what I'm learning more. It is about the terpenes, I guess. I'm learning all this. It's terpenes, give you mood. So it's all about the blends. And that's what Dan was kicking to me when we were having a beer about coffee. Was like everybody, in Hipsterville or high-end coffee, they're like single source. And this bag is from single source. And I've heard this before, and that sounds good, I think, in kind of the Whole Foods type of like, exactly where it is, this and that, the money isn't sketch. But the best thing about a product, and I've always thought this with art or anything, culture is a blend. It's all about the blends. And Humboldt Headband, first of all, Humboldt is like, they must have got the seeds there. But, or maybe they did. I don't know. But Humboldt, shout out to Northern California. Humboldt's beautiful. I got to do like a bunch of stand-up gigs there. And play gigs. Shout out to Tony Kameen. Shout out to Dan Gabriel with the Mighty Marijuana Logs, which was a play that Doug Benson, Arj Barker, and Tony Kameen wrote. And then I got to act in further down the line when Arj moved to Australia. So that was kind of a good gig. So I did a bunch of theaters with those cats. And I actually was working out my arrest story. Like I have this bit on my album. But I've been doing it more and more again. It's a story about getting arrested in the Lower East Side. But you can listen. I won't do it all on my podcast. But you can listen to it on my album Pure Uncut Joy, which is not on Spotify. Because they're in this label. I love 800 Pound Gorilla. I'm actually wanting to possibly work with them again, but they were in some legal. I know it's another thing. It's all about these royalties, It's really complex, but these big corporations and streaming networks do take advantage of it. And they've been taking advantage of this like fast moving technology to the point where you're not getting royalties for these, spins. So, yeah, I'm back. Yeah, it was just I had the settings on my computer that a bunch of messages were coming through, and I could read them, but it kept on going bing, bing, and I wasn't sure it's going to get picked up on the podcast. But as what I listened to it before, it did not get picked up. So, yeah, so yeah, so it's all about the blends. But, this Headspace was super strong. But this, I want to know where because this is one of the best. It was 15% THC compared to the 21%. Now, the 21%, I hit like 3 hits and I was smacked for a good 4 hours. But this 15%, I could be social. Dan and I were completely social. And the thing is, I went into CVS. I wanted to get back to that story. I went into CVS and I bought a water. Now this is and I used my debit card. And I used my debit card for the joint place. But then I came out. Then I met Dan like maybe 15 minutes later when I was drinking the seltzer waiting for him. And it was so great to see him. We spark up a spliff right in Union Square. And I remember seeing all these cops drive by. And it was just like we remember everything being illegal in New York, especially when I was hanging with him back in the day. He's been out in California for the last almost 10 years now. Time has just been flying by. But no, we hit the spliff. I remember these cops were like 10 feet away from us and we did not give a shit. Well, I gave a little bit of shit. I said something and I was having some of this Humboldt Headband. But he was like, dude, it's 100% legal. And that's what's kind of trippy about New York. It is. It's 100% legal. Like they're not going to shake you down. But it is getting kind of sketchy with like all these other places that are selling cannabis. And it's not one of these brands that have signed everything up. It's just, I don't want to downplay the underground market either because weed has just been coming up from, it's been held down so much. And not everybody has that much money that they could spend on all these licenses. It does take a lot of capital. And that's what I wanted to talk about. B3 also. That's the Ben & Jerry's new brand. And I just watched like 10-minute video on Forbes. Forbes has like this great video about Ben and Jerry's new cannabis line, and their stuff is like 15%. But I got fascinated. That's when I learned a little bit more about the effects of the terpines and the terpenes. But let's get back and I definitely want to give a shout out to this company, because this was definitely one of the better Rise, R-I-Z-E. Now, I saw where it was grown. I didn't keep the packaging. I wish I did. But it showed like the farm, and it was in New York, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. They must have got this I guess they're all over the place. R-I-Z-E. But Dazed, check them out. Check out Rise. But the thing was, we went and got a slice of pizza, and then I realized I couldn't find my ATM card. I left my ATM. This is a true story. This is brutal, especially when you just got high. Now, I didn't lose it when I was high. I lost it when I was not high. But I left my ATM in the place where I bought the seltzer water. So we went to get a slice. They didn't take a swipe, so I had to get some money out of the bank. And then I realized I didn't have my ATM card. And I was like, oh shit, I started hanging out with Dan, who flew in from California. We went to we were in Union Square checking out this freestyle rap battle. And the dude's hustling with chess. The rap battle has been going on 10 years. It wasn't a rap battle, it was a freestyle. It was Friday night in Union Square, and I guess it's been going on 10 years. But you could tell it was kind of a scene. There was like 30 people in a circle freestyle rapping at each other, but everybody's got their phones out. It's a different thing. This ain't Beat Street. Everybody's trying to bust it on the gram. But it was still cool. So that was just trippy to see, because it was a beautiful night. Like, it was just, now I'm getting romantic with Dan Curry. No, we were checking out the rap battle. I got high, and we went to go to get a slice of pizza. And then I realized I didn't have my ATM card. So I was like, oh shit. And I had to tell Dan, I was like, Dan, I think I left my ATM card. And then I started walking back, because I have lost stuff before, but I have been meditating more. I did 20 minutes today. I've been listening to Eckhart Tolle videos before I'm going to bed. I'm doing my 5 Tibetan right stretches. I've been doing my 60-second hang on a pull-up bar. That's been my latest routines. But yeah, so I was like, damn man, I think I left my ATM, and I had to go through my brain. Did I leave it? I didn't want to. I respect Dazed. I didn't think, but I didn't want to leave it at the dispensary. Now, it was cool and all, but weed heads, who knows where that could be? Somebody could have ate it or something. I don't know. But what I realized was the last place I used it, and I remember using it at CVS, and this was right before we went to the pizza joint. But we smoked a joint before we went to the pizza joint. But So I was like, it's at the CVS. We walked like 10 blocks. We walked like, dude, like it was like 20-minute walk, hardcore. He was like, is it right here? I go, no, it's up here. It's up here. Because we went way down into the village and we were looking for a place to eat, but nothing was open. New York has gotten soft, man. Brooklyn, there's stuff open. I know Brooklyn a little bit more than Manhattan. So I was on Yelp trying to figure out a place to get a bite. And it was that late. It was like Friday night, maybe like 12:30. And so everywhere we went to, they said their kitchen had just closed. Like, you could still get a drink, but it's like kitchens were closing. So we went back to the CVS, and it was way back. And the whole time I was, oh shit, man. I had a bunch of shit to do. I left my ATM at the CVS. So we went back there, and it was literally right when I walked up. And CVS stays open till late, but guess what? They closed. It was that late that the CVS doesn't. do 24 hours, but they do like midnight, 11, 8. You can roll in there and I've been in there late night. It's never too late, but they open up late, especially in Manhattan. Everything should be open 24 hours, but now it's not. But we walk up and the gate they had the metal gate like pulled down, but there's a light on. And then there was this little square, like 2 feet off the ground, like an air hole in the gate. And I put my face down and there was all this scaffolding. Like it just looked closed, what I'm saying. This place looked closed. And that was the last place I left my ATM. I know this is stressful. Hopefully it's not straight, but it works out great. Everybody would be cool. So I'm yelling into the hole. I'm like, yo. And I saw this dude, this young cat, and Sky in there, and he looked kind of stoned. You know, it was midnight shift at CVS. He's like, we're all closed. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I think I left my ATM. And he goes, in the machine? I was like, no. You know, when you go in there, you can just use the, the robots, the automated, Dan the Automator. So I used the automator. I was like, no, it's over in the automation cashier. And I really thought at this point, I thought there was no way I was going to get this ATM. Just because the place is closed, just because my fear, and I was a little high, so it kind of added to the anxiety. But then he was like, I got it. And he gave it back to me. I was like, oh, shit. I can't tell you how happy I was in that moment. I can't. It was a whole, and we were so psyched. And then Dan and I went and caught a beer, and that was amazing. So shout out to Dan Curry. Shout out to CVS. Shout out to Dazed Cannabis. I love that place. And that was one. And then we finished. That was the thing. We only smoked a half of the joint, and then I had one Lagunitas, and then I hung out with Dan and smoked the rest, and it was and just caught up, and it was just like such a chill time. And then I went home and I slept like a baby, and then I went out, and I did another show, at Gutter. Shout out to the comedians you should know, show. There's a place called Gutter, and I know what you're saying, but it's a bowling alley that has like a band room in the back and a cool like bar, and it's just been there for a while. I always knew about it. It's actually the one place. It was the first time Orange Barker from the Flight of the Conchords. I met the guys from the Flight of the Conchords at that place. That was the first time I ever stepped foot in that place. And it's this dope little place in Williamsburg. It's not Brooklyn Bowl. Brooklyn Bowl is a little bit classier, and it's like bigger bands and shit like that. Shout out to Brooklyn Bowl. I love a good Brooklyn Bowl show, and I have been bowling there. This has more of a dive bar, but like a punk rock back room. But they put on a sick comedy show Wednesday and Saturday night. It's called Comedians You Should Know. Shout out Mike Leibowitz, David Drake. Those guys were the guys that put it together. And then Matt Ryan. Shout out Matt Ryan, who was hosting that night. Check out that show. I went over there. I had a great set on Saturday. And I wish I filmed it. I didn't film it. I got to get my camera game up on deck. Because it was a great set. I love that show. If you're ever in New York and you're looking for a cool show in Brooklyn, check out Comedians You Should Know. They have an Instagram, CYSKNYC at Gutter Bar. That's a great show. So those are the things I did. And just getting back to how good that feeling was to find that ATM. I love when I find something, and I'm always like, just remember that feeling. You can't keep it with you, but you can keep it with you, you know? And it was right when I didn't think it was going to work. Or there was, I just was like, oh man, this is the classic. Like I already ran through the scenario of calling my bank, shutting down the card. And like how I was going to work through the weekend. And, at the end of the day, it would have worked out. That's the other thing is like, with meditation, like every time I predict the future, it's never what I think it's going to be. So that's kind of the idea of non-thinking, or you want to move above thinking, the thinking mind, and kind of just go with feel. And I have to go with feel with Dazed Cannabis. That place was dope, man. And especially their pre-rolls, everything. The one thing that I think is happening is because the underground market is moving so big and so fast, now these legal dispensaries that are coming out have to deal with it. Like there's like $7 joints. I saw like half-gram joints, which is fine. A half-gram joint of a really high, especially like I bought this full gram headspace. Like I hit it like 3 times and I lost it. I lost it in the park. Because I was just like, it was so strong. Like I just definitely needed just a half-gram of that thing. That's what we're all learning. Like California, that's what I was talking to Dan, who's been living in California. California has already had this all figured out, and they had the terpenes figured out. But they also went through, whenever all this freedom, this kind of explosion of cannabis, everybody, there's mistakes and, dosage and food, especially that's when I was really fascinated with B3, which is the Ben & Jerry's new brand. It's called Ben's Blends. Ben's Blends. B&B. Ben's Blends is what it's called. I definitely think the New York shops need to pick up Ben's Blend as fast as possible because it was heavy, man. If you listen to this, watch this Forbes video, he literally, because I would always but he's talking about the business aspect of it because they're going to license it out, and then it goes back to black business owners because, it's the amount of equity, the cannabis laws, these awful cannabis laws affected, black people 10 billion times worse than whites. I mean, not to go racial or political, but I guess it's just it's a matter of fact. So it's just like building equity as this market explodes. Like the richest people in the world is all like the alcohol people, like the Anheuser-Busch people, and all the alcohol, and who knows what the nicotine people, who knows what their, where that money is, the tobacco industry. But another stat I saw was like where legal cannabis is, that, the amount of tobacco sales goes down. I think everything's going to equal it out as we figure it out going into the future. But it's just really exciting, especially in this Northeast area, because there's so many people and there's so much tension that I think cannabis could help and benefit some of the, it's just so many concentrated people. That's why you get that New York attitude. So I think it just will mellow everybody out a little bit as it gets figured out. Because that's the other thing I've been seeing, like in Michigan, it's people are using cannabis. My generation, people are using cannabis more than they're using alcohol. That was the stat that I was hearing, is like, because it's so legal, Michigan's got great herb. That's the thing is, and they've been figuring it out. But the shops that I did go to was like high THC, because I think it's just so cold. They're dealing with such indoor. But that's the thing about this berry blends that I'm really excited about was the, again, watch the Forbes video on berry blends. It explains kind of the more social issues where the money gets back in. He was saying he wasn't going to make much money off of it, but the concept behind it was he was just remembering the 70s. And I remember when you have a whole joint and you could smoke the whole joint without being, absolutely blasted. Like you can just it kind of prolongs the feel. It's like having a nice glass of wine, and it's more social. And that's how Jamaica was. And that's the guy that is the salesperson for Barry's Blends. Was talking about like visiting Jamaica. Like the only time, growing up in the East Coast in America, only time you can really enjoy a full joint, because the herb over the last 10 years has gotten so strong. The only time you can actually enjoy a full cannabis spliff is when you're in, Jamaica, where mostly it's all grown outdoor, which I've been talking about this whole time. And I think the New York federal laws are all about outdoor grow. But, there's been this culture within the underground about this strong cannabis, and some people are like, that shit doesn't get me high. And then it's like, it's just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger, which is not bad. I think especially for pain, I got to get a wisdom tooth pulled like in 2 weeks, and I'm really sketched out about it. But you got to do what you got to do, and I'm sure they're going to give me some painkillers, and I'll probably take them because they're going to be in that first day out. Yeah, that's no joke. After surgery, like I'm getting surgery. But I do want some cannabis, so hopefully I'll line up some. But what I have been seeing, the Housing Works got some good old school hash, and that's what I've been eyeing up. So I'm gonna get a ball of that old school hash. Lobo, that's the company. With Matt Koff episode, I was having Lobo. Now they have their roll. They're all about the roll. And it kind of feels, it just feels almost in the cigar fashion of really looking at the spliffs. And then they're also, they got a punch too. Like, don't mess around with Lobo. But they also have this hash ball that I've been looking at. And I'll probably have to get that. And it's not like the new vape, like Dabba-docious. I'm talking about the old school, you put in a wizard pipe. I want that shit. After I get my fucking tooth pulled. Well, that will be a fun episode. I'm going to be talking wah, 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 wah. But you got to do what you got to do. You know the gig. And hopefully cannabis will be there to help me out. Especially edibles would probably be good for that. But sometimes when you're in super pain, there comes anxiety. And then like super sativa, like super thinky weed might not be the best when you are... when you're in some pain. You definitely want the indica. But the Headband was like an indica blend, but it was late at night and we wanted to go to sleep afterwards. So it was just the perfect spliff. Shout out to Dazed Cannabis Shop, and shout out to Dan Curry, and shout out to, I'm just excited about, I'm going to ask about this Berry Blends. Because their spliffs were only like 15, 16%. It's like a lower THC, but the terpenes, that's what I was learning. It's all about the terpenes. Like, that's what we were kind of learning from the other spot, was the terpenes really do manage the effect and the vibe. Much like I was talking about these notes. It comes down to like just moods. I really think like moods, in emotion, in vibes, in flavors, all are connected and all kind of blend into each other, Same thing with like music. Like nowadays, I really love the Gorillas with the Z. They did like an animation. That's kind of been my back burner project. Like I want to do like a Gorillas type project, where I can do some raps, I could do whatever, and then you're doing music, you're doing raps, you're bringing artists, and you're also doing animation. Oh, dude, think about how sick that is. I mean, that's just insane. I'm just wondering if that got picked up, but I don't think it is. Like, I had to open my YouTube, and then it went right to... Everybody, subscribe to the Cannabis Coffee Hour YouTube, please. That's the gig. Now I'm going to make the videos more and more. The quality is going to go up. We're going to shoot around the world. Just trying to figure out what music I've been listening to. I got some Foo Fighters. I got some Clutch. I got some Alan Watt Chill Step Mix. I like to listen to Alan Watts with dubstep or with chill step, which is just like vibey beats. And that's what everybody's been into, you know. Yeah, I looked up music. Tom Petty, you know, I'm pumping a lot of Tom Petty. Ghost of Room from Mike Doty. Shout out to Mike Doty, who has also been on the Cannabis Coffee Hour, the lead singer of the Soul Coughing, epic 90s joint. Little bit of Stick Figure. I was driving in New York City. I had to drive through Midtown, and and whenever I'm driving in New York City, I listen to reggae. It's either reggae or Grateful Dead. Like, I can listen to some hip hop or some rock and roll, but I gotta stop like every 30 seconds or dodge something. Talk about awareness. Talk about living in the moment. And I wasn't high or anything. I was definitely in the moment. And I had to drive through Manhattan at night, and then there was like parades and weird shit going on. GPS was making me weave like it was fucking Centipede, the video game. And I was listening to Stick Figure, and it was just so chill. It definitely made me kind of sit back and relax and figure it all out. I love that way with positive music, you know. I think everything, not yowzers. I just put dumped a whole thing of water on the ground, which is never good. Hold on. Okay. All cleaned up. I got a big towel on the situation, like a beach towel. It's dry as a bone. It was a little puddle, and then I just put a big beach towel. Everything's dry. All the wires are away. You know, that's what you got to do. You got to stay calm, stop recording, and get a big beach towel anytime you have a problem. Big beach towel. Summer is coming on, man. The weather's been so good. Even though there's drama in the LBC in New York City, weed is becoming legal and the weather's great. New York, when the weather's great, is just ridiculously cool and awesome. And there's so much to see and so much to do. As much as there is to complain, there's so many people and so much chaos. The blends of the situation, the idea of just being able to walk around and go to the park and pick up a legal spliff and walk here, get this type of food, get some Thai food, get some Mexican food, get some great coffee, great see a comedy show, go bowling. It's all out there, man. Shout out to the Gutter over in Williamsburg. Definitely want to do more shows. People have been shooting specials over there. So I could do that. But I was thinking maybe come out of somewhere from New York and do my next project. I recorded my last album here. And then my album before that was in San Francisco. Maybe I'll just try to do something in DC, but it's all up to me these days. That's the thing with the creative stuff. You know, the big industry doing the television shows right now with the writer's strike, you know, that nothing's moving. So that's why I've been leaning into the podcast a little bit more. And we'll lean into this and move forward. And I'm going to start interviewing some of these guys that are growing out of the whole New York cannabis scene. I definitely talked to the guy from Back Home Cannabis about an interview. And then I talked to the owner of Dazed, Kayshawn, about an interview. And I don't know, it seems interesting to me. I'll listen to more of this, but definitely want to talk music and comedy as well, and morning routines and good coffee. Good God. Stumptown, come on. I've been yelling your praises my whole career. Well, I guess the first time I heard about Stumptown would be like 2005. So I started stand-up in 1999, but I was drinking coffee. You know, I have these songs called Coffee and Weed. I have two versions, the original OG version, and then I have the DC Go-Go remix, which is actually an anthem. I almost did this at the Union Square. They have this big cannabis rally. Maybe I'll try to do that next year. And I actually wanted to do stand-up. They asked me to perform the song. And I could have gotten a drummer. I have performed it live. I did it with the band Lion Eyes in DC. That's on my YouTube. Check out my YouTube, especially Rob Cantrell, and then especially subscribe to the Cannabis Coffee Hour YouTube. But I shouldn't try to sell it. It is what it is, you know. For anything forced is kind of whack. It just has to happen. And you use your intention. And my intention is to always put out something good and nice and cool and kind. So my audience is nice, cool, kind. So I'm excited to go to shows and do shows. And I'm excited to do this podcast live. You know, we're going to do it live. We're going to do some live streams. We're going to do some live coffee making. I'll definitely have some espressos. It's more like I have to not overdo it. If I'm going to do this podcast, I have to keep it kind of even keel in order to produce this. You know, I'm doing everything right now. I do all the editing. I do all the recording. I do all the writing. I buy the product or I line up free product. And that's where we're going to be moving towards. So we can gather more and more cool, sufficient information. Because it's all moving so fast, like rolling on a river. Big wheel keep on turning. Proud Mary keep on burning. Shout out to Tina Turner, R.I.P. She was the best. I always loved that performance with her and Mick Jagger. I think it's at Live Aid. I don't know if they Man, she would hang with the Stones and blow them off the stage. And she was a healthy woman for so long. I mean, she performed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, she didn't super blow up until the 80s. And then she had all these mega hits. What's love got to do with it? Great tune. All those songs are amazing. And then they made a movie about her life. Yeah, man. R.I.P. Tina Turner. That's it, man. That's it for the Cannabis Coffee Hour. Peace and love.